Well, guess what, everybody? We learned this weekend that you can't really flip the bird at an audience that isn't even there. That's right. This weekend at the IBJJF Worlds, Nicholas Marigali was disqualified because he extended a middle finger or stretched it out, depending on your definition, and they didn't take too kindly to that. Hey, perhaps you, like me, this weekend learned that the IBJJF has a code of conduct. I didn't know that was a thing, especially given the way that some of the athletes and coaches act on and off the mats, and some of the spectators. Now, granted, he wasn't immediately disqualified. They did it after the fact, and there was a lot of opinions on if it was okay. Should we be disqualified for yelling at audience members? This one felt especially mean given the fact that Marigali was saying there was an audience member who was saying very nasty and cruel things to him, which kind of comes with the territory. Apparently, as an athlete, you just got to kind of eat it. Now, as somebody who's done comedy on stage, I can tell you, hecklers are the worst. However, in that heckler's defense, he did get a vaccine, a test, or at the very least, a fake vaccination card to be able to make said heckling happen. This felt like the NFL. Now, stay with me here, because the NFL is super popular and Jiu-Jitsu can not really fill up an audience. This feels like the NFL handing out fines for excessive celebrations or dumb penalties, but the difference is the NFL still usually allows the result to hold. They actually did more harm to us, the viewing audience, by not giving us an absolute final. And to his credit, Felipe Pena still tried to make that absolute final happen, even though he really didn't have to. They were going to give him the medal anyways. Look, I get it. We should have some policies that make it so that the athletes don't act like idiots. However, maybe we should be enacting some policies for audience members. I'm sure there are some policies that we agreed to whenever we show up as audience members. I don't read it, and I'm sure you don't either. Why don't we simplify the language for audience members by creating what I like to call the Don't Be a Dick Defense Act, or DBADA for short. We can workshop the name. If you're heckling the athletes, how about we kick you the fuck out? And it might open up the area to subjectivity, but again, you kick out an audience member, that's just maybe a bad Reddit post that we read later. You kick out one of the two athletes that's going to be competing in the absolute finals, you got nothing. Then we're all just kind of doing this for no reason. Especially when you consider the fact that most of these finals aren't even contested. They're done through gentlemen's agreements where there are closeouts between team members who don't want to fight each other because they like each other. And again, people had very, very strong opinions about what happened as a result of that middle finger. So hear me out, IBJJF. I know this one sounds like a stretch, but if two guys don't like each other and are not friends, maybe we can let them have a match. We get rid of the whole they're best friends narrative. And they don't want to fight. So make these people fight. Because guess what? They didn't like each other at that point. You might as well give them a match, because at the very least, we would have had something to watch. So as a result of this very, in my opinion, short-sighted decision, we now have Felipe Pena retiring from the gi and robbing us of that match. So great job, everybody. And finally, I know a lot of people are talking about the IBJJF and how they must have felt about this event. And I argue, I don't even think they were that mad about the middle finger. No, if anything, it seems like they were more pissed off about copyright infringement. Because if you've ever received an email about dues, fees, or black belt affiliation, you know the extension of a middle finger is really their shtick. I'm probably not getting invited to another event. Hey, don't go anywhere. You're watching the Grappling Hour. Hey, everybody. I am stoked to begin the ADCC process. You know, it's a really great thing when you get to see our athletes, some of the best, going through the trials experience. It's a grueling experience. We watched all of it. We were here doing a fight companion for it. And one of the things that I get excited about is when we give the athletes their proper exit interview from the trials process as they start to make their way into the actual ADCC event, which will happen in approximately 300 and some days. I don't really know exactly.
306 days.
300. Well, our guest knows what it is. And I'm going to go ahead and go to him real quick, but I want to give him his due congratulations. He is a former ADCC competitor, but also will be competing at ADCC 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your ADCC trials winner, John Hansen. John, how are you doing, sir?
Doing well yourself?
Not too bad. I like that you know the exact date. Do you have a counter? Do you have something that you're using to make sure that you are counting down the dates properly?
Yeah, I got a ticker on my phone, and Mo just posted the countdown on the ADCC official page today. So,
and that's the thing. I was going off of that as well, but there's a part of me that goes, you know what? I don't know the exact date, but I love the fact that 2 seconds into me saying it, you go, I know the date. I know how many days. I'm counting down too.
Yeah, I've been counting down since 2019. So,
well, let me ask this. We're going to get into your actual trials experience for this go round, but you've done the actual ADCC before. How did that happen?
Well, I did the trials in 2019. I took second in the trials. I notably got turned into a meme when I was cartwheeled over by Nicky Rod and finished. So. I had a better experience this time than that time. So I had a great experience up until then, last time. But, you know, then after that happened, that sucked. But, you know, the next day, I figured, man, you know what? Like, people always get hurt. People always get injured. And you know, I'm going to hope that they call, and I'm going to start training right now like I'm going. And so we never took a day off. And so then, I was in touch with Mo. He asked me if I was in shape. I said I was in the best shape that I'd ever been in. I'd added like 15 pounds over the course of that year. I won American Nationals. I qualified for Team USA and was slated to go over to Kazakhstan to compete in UWW Worlds the week before the ADCC. So I was in really good shape. And then I did do that. And won the gi over there. That was cool. And then flew into LA. But in the interim, they called me in August and asked me if I was healthy. And the Asian qualifier from Australia, I'm trying to think of his name, is big dude Dennis. He tore his pec, and so he was out. And they asked me, and I said I was good to go. So I was very blessed. And then I competed in the ADCC in 2019. So it was good.
So most people, when they're going through these trials experiences, they don't know what it is that it feels like to be at the dance. They're trying to get to there. What for you makes the extra incentive of having tasted just a little bit of it before?
Well, I really wanted to go in 2019, obviously. I couldn't make the first trials, so I made the second. Came up just short. But I don't know that there was much of a difference between the first trials and the second trials, 2019 trials and 2022 trials, in the sense that I had in my mind that I was going to go to the ADCC in 2019, and obviously fate stepped in the way on that, but then I got to go anyway. And I had this exact same perspective this time. The best thing is that, okay, cool, 6-minute matches. I was in Serbia the week before for the UWW Worlds. They really got to figure out how to schedule those two tournaments on different months or something.
Yeah.
But those are 5-minute rounds. And if you break contact on top, like you don't like the guard, you break contact, that's -1 point. That happens 4 times the DQ. So it's a very scramble based rule set, very heavy on action. And so a 6-minute match at the trials. The rule set at the ADCC is a little more grueling, but it was a great I mean, if I was prepping for Nogi Worlds and then the trials were right afterwards, that would suck. It's two completely different rule sets where you've got like the IBJJF, which is, significantly slower and more boring, where people can kind of hang on by an advantage or a penalty to win a 10-minute match with 8 minutes left. And then you've got like the ADCC where like the refs will penalize you into, obscurity if you don't push the pace. So, I get really lucky in that regard. I'm not sure that if I
It does. And again, I'm trying to get a perspective of the competitor, because to me, I think it's a good way to understand better what this means to you. Because again, some people have never done an ADCC. They're just trying to get the shot at it. And for you to have that ability to do that, and then knowing like, okay, now I kind of know the level I need to be. I do want to come back to UWW in a second, because I have several friends who compete in that as well. Our good friend Eric Medina sends his regards. He loves the hell out of you.
Good dude, man.
He's one of the best human beings that I know. Just quality grappler, and also a bronze medalist from this last go round in the no-gi. But we'll get to that, and we'll get back to that, because I for sure want to talk about it. But having said that, you also now are coming into this tournament, and you mentioned that you wanted to have different times. Did you eliminate the UWW as a possibility on this go round? Did you just say like, no, I'm so focused on making sure that I secure and punch my bag back over to ADCC on this one?
Well, no, I went over to Serbia and competed there the week before. The thing was, I was just like, you know what? There's no heel hooks in the UWW. So other than that, if I play a safe game and I play an aggressive game, I'm probably gonna be fine. I'm 35, so I have very few opportunities left before like Father Time beats me that I can represent Team USA. 2019 to be on Team USA was and like win gold there was probably the single most exciting moment of my life. I should say, other than getting married to my wife, who's amazing. But it was pretty great. So then the ADCC afterwards, was a level above that. So I didn't want to miss out on any opportunities to be on Team USA. And I wanted to be a part of, we had a really good team this year. I wanted to be a part of like putting us on the podium as a team instead of just as an individual. And we were in 4th place. So the thing that sucks about that, and obviously we'll talk about it later, is I lost in the finals in the gi to Poland. Had I won, that would have been a 20-point swing in points. That would have put us pull on in 5th and put us in 3rd. So that would have been cool. So totally messed that one up on my own. But it didn't change my prep at all. We'd been prepping for the trials since like July, and we knew we didn't. I think they had changed the dates a couple times, and so it was just whenever they were going to be, they were going to be. We had Nogi Worlds, then UWW, then ADCC. So by the time Nogi Worlds rolled around, it was, we're not peaking for this, but we're going to try out a lot of the new things that I've been working on for this, and then we're going to tweak. And then at Serbia, we're going to let it rip and see how that goes, because the trials is the most important term of the year. Because like, I don't think we got to talk about this, but before I started jiu-jitsu, I was watching the ADCC, and I told my dad that I was going to do it someday. And he thought I meant, you're going to do a grappling tournament. Well, that's cool. You probably should start grappling first. I was like, well, no, I'm going to be there with those guys. And, as supportive as he was just like, hey, they look like they're in really good shape and they look really good at what they do. John, you went like 2 and 500 or whatever it was as a kid wrestling. Like maybe maybe you better start. And so like to make, it's always been the most important goal for me to win the ADCC, but before you get to do that, you got to win the trials. So we ramped all the way up to that.
All right. Let's stay on that though. What drew you in? What made you feel like you wanted to be at the ADCC even at that early of a time in your journey?
Well, because I knew then, I was just watching it on YouTube back in 2006 and 2008. And I knew back then that was the peak of submission wrestling, of grappling, was the ADCC. And interestingly enough, because I don't really think the ADCC does enough to market, it was very difficult to figure out like when the trials were or anything like that. It's way better now than it used to be. But before, like, it's in some high school gymnasium, and nobody except for people in the know knew, but back then, like the IBJJF did a terrible job of marketing as well. I didn't even know what the IBJJF was until well after I knew what the ADCC was. And I knew what the ADCC was because I was following Pride, and there were guys in Pride like Ricardo Arona that was just an absolute monster in the ADCC, and Mark Kerr. And so that was on their Wikipedia pages. You knew who those guys were. And so that was like the first thing that I identified with. Oh, if you're elite, you do that. And if you're elite, you win. And if you're the elite, you win that. And so like that was always the goal. I always said I want to be a black belt world champion, and I wanted to win the ADCC. So, big goals, but I don't believe in small goals because, I think that at any point, like after one of those goals, you could just say, I'm done. And, if I don't achieve that big goal, well, that'll suck, but at least I won't have stopped halfway.
So you were watching these, you said, with your dad. Was your dad practicing at this time, or was he somebody who was...
I was just like, I was at home over the summer in college, and I've been watching grappling a lot. And at the time, like, I was way too shy to actually go to a school. And so I was like practicing out body pillow, watching like Marcelo Garcia hit X guard stuff. Because that's the only instructional that was on YouTube at the time. Couldn't find anything on the closed guard or 1,000 ways to do an arm bar. It was Marcelo Garcia's X guard and Lucas Leitch's like knee shield half guard from way back in the day. And, and they were like revolutionizing the game. And so that was the first two things that I learned before I even knew how to use a closed guard to break someone's posture. So like, then like I was huge into Marcelo because he was a king, and he still is, like how can a guy that small do that many things to the people that big? And yeah, so I was watching that, and my dad was, what are you watching here on the computer? And I'll check it out. So it was pretty cool. So we got into that. Like, is this like wrestling? Because John, wrestling went really terrible for you, and it did. So I'm like, well, no, I think it's a little different, and it was pretty cool.
I mean, there's definitely crossover, but you do learn the different skill sets that you have for it. So obviously that was something that you probably figured out pretty quickly, which was, okay, I don't have to be great at wrestling, but the fact that you have a wrestling background comes in handy when you run into some brick walls here and there.
Well, yeah, I would say that like the thing I was most elite at in wrestling was being pinned. And so like spending all that time on your back, like maybe it's just more innate to develop a good guard. So
yeah, exactly. You were just building that time beforehand. People just caught on later. Let me ask this. So your dad, though, obviously, he sees that part. You make a goal. You say it out loud to your parents. What did he say when you did end up going to ADCC in 2019?
Well, he didn't remember the initial conversation. So, like, it's like, you're not going to, and that's just like one fleeting moment that your child says something dumb, and then you keep going on, right? So, like, so I told him, hey, I'm going out to the ADCC. He's like, oh, is that a big deal? And like, we did some things that were kind of big deals. I was like, oh yeah, Dad, you remember that thing we were watching when we were a kid? And when I was, in my early 20s, oh yeah, that's this. Oh, is that a big deal? Yeah, that's a big deal. So he didn't remember the conversation. But
no, it's terrible. Because again, sometimes, listen, kids say they're going to be a lot of things. Any parent that hears their kid say they're going to be an astronaut is like, why would you? Yeah, sure. Okay, kid, whatever you want. I'm sure they hear it dozens upon dozens of times. It is more so that for your origin story to be like, Dad, look, I did it. And he goes, did what?
That's about it.
I don't even know who you are. Like, that kind of look has to be the most amazing thing to be able to go, well, I'm glad this worked out for everybody. But that's still pretty dope, because the fact that your dad, even if it wasn't the goal that he set out for you or that he knew maybe was the most important to you, I think you could recontextualize that all these years later by saying like, hey, Dad, listen, this is what happened. It did happen. I said it was going to happen. I made it happen. And now it's made me all the better in that journey to getting there. So,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, I think in a weird way, there are those conversations that happen that even though they may not be significant, to the other person at the time, when they learn what it means to you, I'm pretty sure your dad very quickly goes, oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, like my dad has been the most supportive person in my life when it comes to really anything I ever wanted to do. So I told him that I was going to leave college to, to pursue a career in MMA. And, that obviously went over about as well as you'd expect. And then from that, hey, you know what? I'm actually just not very durable. So I think we're going to switch to grappling. Was that profitable? No, but it could be. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, I'm trying to figure it out. And he was always super supportive. I mean, he went to every local tournament, every regional tournament that I did. He worked on the railroad for many years. His body is just broken down like you wouldn't believe. So to get him to fly anywhere was like an act of Congress. But when I said I was going to the ADCC and I was in California, and my mom had tickets, and so that was pretty dang cool. So he followed my whole career and been super supportive. He just didn't remember what the ADCC was. I think part of that also is like my wife didn't know how big the ADCC was. She does jiu-jitsu. But at the time, like, I don't talk about things unless they're going to happen because I don't like to, I just don't, pretty quiet about things that are coming up. And so, I had told her I wanted to do the trials and she thought it was just like some tournament in 2018 for the first trials. It was the same weekend that my brother-in-law was getting married, and and we had gotten married a month and a half earlier, and so we were going to the wedding, right? And I'm going to the trials, but you know about how well that one went over. So I skipped the first trials to go to my brother-in-law's wedding. He's an amazing guy, and we had a blast out in Colorado. But then the second trials happened, and I took second, and between the first trials and the second trials, my wife kind of figured out like what the ADCC was and how huge a deal it is in our sport. And so when I took second, it like probably hit her way worse than it hit me because she's like the best person that I've ever met. And that was like what really refocused me from feeling like crap to being like, okay, cool. No, we just got to go anyway, if for no other reason than because my wife's really sad and like taking a whole lot of this onto herself. Like, oh man, this is my fault that John's not in the ADCC right now, and no, it's me. I couldn't get it done. So now I need to go anyway, just so that she doesn't feel bad about it. And then I was blessed enough to be able to, so it worked out.
Just mentioning the organizational roadblocks is giving me anxiety because I am a deep scheduler and I try to let people know as soon as possible when I see conflicts. So I'm the guy who, when I get my calendar out, giant calendar, I go, nope, can't happen. This is this. And people go, what does that mean? You can't do this? Nope, it's not happening. I have to do this. And people will look at me and I go, trust me, you want to hear this conversation now, as opposed to us having a very serious conversation later. So I do my best to do that. But yes, there are those big occasions where I remembered once we do fight companions for all of the major ADCC stuff. So I remembered one of the guys who works on my stuff, one of my go-to guys who helps with the directing and behind the scenes stuff. I said, hey man, we're going to do ADCC and we're going to do a fight companion. He goes, down, let's do it. I go, great. It's this date. He goes, ooh, I have a trip to Big Bear. And I go, how did you fuck up so bad? It's 6 months out right now. How would you fuck up that bad? And he's like, well, I didn't know it was ADCC. I was like, ADCC announced when it was 2 years ago. You have the time. Like, it's not that big of a surprise, dummy. So I gave him a lot of shit for that. But again, I realize I'm a certain brand of crazy, much like you are for competition. So it happens. It's just, this is what we subscribe to. This is what we want to do. And if you want to do it, you got to be there. So it comes with the territory.
I said that's also like, so John, I don't want to speak myself in third person, but me in 2018 was significantly less mature and less of an adult than me in 2021 is. I got promoted to a new position in my company, which just caused me to have to grow up really quick and develop a lot of organizational habits really fast because then all of a sudden I was, going from just being focused on me to focus on managing a lot of people. And so, I had to grow up and figure out that, oh yeah, I need to schedule things a year out. Oh yeah, I need to make sure that there are no conflicts. And so now that's not a thing, but it was then. And it's probably one of the things that Before it was, she's like, oh yeah, my brother's getting married on this date. Cool. Yeah. What do I have going on that day? Oh, I had the trials going on that date. So, you learn.
To be fair, famously, there are things you can't avoid. When I got married, I think it was Sergio Pettis who was fighting Rafael dos Anjos, and I really wanted to see that fight. And I went up to my wife and I go, bad news. And she goes, what do you mean bad news? We're getting married. I go, right. No, I still love you and we're going to do it. It's just, and she goes, is there a fight? I go, there is a fight. And she goes, well, don't watch it. And I go, no, we can't have it on a TV. And she goes, why would we have it on our wedding? And I go, no, you raise a valid point. So my groomsmen throughout the night literally would come up to me like Godfather style and go, Raph, I want to let you know that he got dropped in the third and this is what's happening right now. And I'd go, thank you. You can leave. And people were like, what were they whispering to you? And I was like, oh, I was getting fight results all night. Like they all thought that they were like clearing out mafioso hits at the night and be like, no. Tonight we take care of Chinzo. It's fine. So anyway, that's a silly thing. I would ask this though. Okay. Now we know what it means to you. I want to go and ask about this specific trials experience. Now, you have several things that you got to do in order to go ahead and actually punch your ticket. Your first match, you end up having a pretty good start to your day. Now, most people would say, hey, listen, nobody likes a points fighter. I kind of like a points fighter in this context when it's 18-0 to start the day. So even if the submission doesn't happen, it's a pretty good way of saying, all right, it's a good start. So talk us through your first match at trials.
Well, it sucked, to be honest, because I always say that like friends should have to fight each other in the finals. It's just the way it should be. Back in 2013, I won Pans as a brown belt. My first match was against Tom McMahon, the guy from the trials. And I mean, really good dude. Back in 2013, I was playing knee shield on him, and he grabbed a foot lock and put all 5 toes at least 6 inches up my rectum. Just totally popped my ankle like 4 or 5 times before I even had a chance to react and tap. And I ended up winning the match, winning the division. But I remember Tom every time he gets golden reins. And my ankle's never been the same since. So I saw, I was like, oh, Tom's in the division. Good, he's in the lists. That'll be great. We'll meet each other in the finals. God forbid he's on the same side. And then, oh, hey, I'm your first match. Crap. It's like, because Tom is a tank and unbelievably strong. And so, part of it was, I just want to get through the first match, want to get a good sweat going on. But the thing is that anything Tom grabbed a hold of, Tom would have taken home with him. He could have legitimately arm locked me from mount, and it would have happened. He's just that strong, that good, and he would have figured out a way to make something happen. So every time I transitioned and scored more points was specifically because I was trying to stay out of Tom taking something home with him. And so transitioning from knee to mount to, back in his guard to passing gigs. I was just trying to stay ahead of wherever he could get his hands connected. So ended up working out, but I really wish I would have fought him in the finals. So
it happens. It's the unfortunate part of this. It's one of those things where I remember for the last trials in the West Coast, I had a couple of my buddies that I was helping to get ready for it. And I was like, all right, guys, there is a possibility you may have to go up against each other. We're different teams, we're all coming here to put in the work that will make us better. But nobody bitches. Nobody complains. It is what it is. We're not in charge. Both of them look and they go, if we both advance, we face each other. And I go, all right. Well, listen, guys, I'm out of this. You guys, I'm out of the room. Not in charge anymore. Guys, I got you as far as I could. All right. Bye, everybody. And it's what it is,
Yeah, totally. Well, the thing is, I was thinking, because obviously styles make matches. And one of the things I was really compelled by was like, man, you know what? I really hope Tom fights Pat Downey in the first round because Tom's got insane close guard. He's super strong. He's long. He's very aggressive with getting the guard. And I don't think he would have given I don't think he would have cared at all.
You can curse on this show. You don't need to worry unless it's for you.
Yeah, I try not to.
Okay,
but
fair.
I don't think he would have cared at all about pulling guard or getting taken down by Pat during the no points, getting the close guard. And then Pat would have had to work against a guy who was ungodly strong, ridiculously good at jiu-jitsu, and and we would have seen like what it looks like when Pat's got to fight another guy who's not Gordon in their close guard. You know what I mean? That's what I was really hoping for the first match to be, because I thought that'd be a really interesting match, and it would have been a tier 1 win, and a huge upset. So, but obviously that didn't happen. So that's kind of what I guess I just think about that because, styles make matches, and sometimes there's some really interesting matches that you just want to see, that sometimes you don't get to. So
I have to say, and I don't know your thoughts or feelings, I kind of got a sense of, oh, yeah, you thought it would make a good styles matchup. Yeah. For me and Downey, I was kind of like, you know what? I'm good with him where he made it, because it gives him that nice taste of what jiu-jitsu is. And then it's kind of like, hey, dude, if you want to play and do this, we'll gladly have you around. We could use some wrestling highlights. But it's like, sometimes I look around and I go, yeah, but if you're too good at this, then it becomes this jiu-jitsu ain't shit thing. And I'm like, no. I ain't like, listen, dude, I like what you do. I liked seeing him out there and put it on our jiu-jitsu guys. But like, let's never forget, this shit hard. It's just difficult to do.
Well, yeah, that's interesting that you put it that way, because so one of the things I've thought for a long time is that, there is way more that jiu-jitsu can take from wrestling than wrestling will ever take from jiu-jitsu because of the rule set. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I was concerned about was, I was surprised that he didn't. I thought Pat, and I'm not trying to criticize him at all, the guy's incredible. I thought Pat would have spent his matches playing the top position more like Danny Chade, the guy I fought in the semis, did, where he would have had a square stance entering into the guys, would he had long hands in the face, and focus on making the guy have to sit up into him, taking front headlocks, moving to side position, moving to the back, getting to positions that he could use his hips and wrestle from. But he just ran into guys' guards, and I was like, dude, you do that against a guy. Against a guy who's got a good guard, and you're gonna get heel hooked by David Ramos, because he's got a good guard, turns out. And so that's the thing I was surprised about, was that I thought he would have had a more square stance style shuffle on the outside, make you annoyed until he gets 2 warnings right before he gets a points call, and then just blast through and use his athleticism. I'm surprised that he didn't. Not that I wanted him to. Really, I assumed that he would do that. Really didn't want him to, because that'd be a hell of a fight. So
yeah, and I mean, listen, dude, I've been telling people that when we would watch it, so again, we're on the West Coast time, and cut to me getting up at 7 a.m. and setting up shop, and I've got coffee in hand, and I go, all right, let's get this bread, and I'm watching it, and I see, a little bit later in the day, Pat Downey going, is that Pat? All right, let's see how this goes. Because I'm curious. I go, wow, how is this going to play out? What is he going to do? What is the strategy? I have an idea, but crazy things happen at this tournament. People sometimes show up in gis.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that later, because one thing that I will tell you right now, before we get to talking about that quarterfinal match, is that on paper, I try to be as objective as possible. I will not lie to you. There is a part of me that roots for the guy that beat Emil, because that's just funny. And when I see Emil show up in a gi, I go, man, I kind of want him to lose just because he's wearing the gi. He's a friend of the show, but this dude is showing up in a gi, and it's way funnier if he loses. So then when it goes, man, do I have to ride or die with this dude just because he beat Emil? So that was going on our side of the world.
Yeah, I that was, well, I mean, Solo showed up, he did his last ACC in the gi, right? Mm. That's savage. That's a level of confidence that I was like, wait, what are we going to see here? This is going
well, let's be very clear. There is a level between Solo and Emil. And we love to give Emil shit on this show, because we like to say that Emil is essentially the Loki of jiu-jitsu, where he likes to play tricks and pranks on all of our friends. And there's nothing funnier than showing up, because famously, I think at the West Coast Trials back in 2017, somebody showed up in a gi, and it was weird. It was, this dude you could tell he wanted the attention. You could tell he was trying to make a big to-do about it. And I'm like, dude, if you show up in a gi, have fun, do your thing. It could work in some ways, but it's kind of a disadvantage. And the dude won a couple times, and he did one celebration after I think he won his first time, where he took the gi off and started screaming to the crowd. And I go, I don't know if I love or hate this, But you know what, dude? What's that?
You had better not win this thing in a game.
But that's, again, you start thinking like, all right, dude,
Right.
you can win one or two of these, but you win the whole thing, we're gonna have words. And the worst part is I do the math and I go, ah, shit, I'm gonna have to interview him if he wins, and I don't know how to interview him without roasting him. So, all right. But let's go to your second match. Your second match, you get the submission, quick time on that one, the round of 16. So, again, a continuation of a pretty good start to your journey. Do you mind talking us through how you ended up getting that submission?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I pulled, and in the pull, I just really wanted I wanted to get inside position with my feet. He's a big guy. I knew that if he did something unexpected, I could carry him in my hooks. So I didn't have to worry about getting injured because hopefully have the second day coming up if that match went well. And then I went to offset his balance, and he either slipped or I caught him off guard. Fell to his hips. When I came up, I pinned his wrist. And I felt that for being as big a guy as he was, my hand went like all the way around his wrist, and I could tell that his wrist was like that. I didn't think his wrist was injured, but I definitely had control of his wrist and had his fist bent a little bit. It's like, okay, cool. We're gonna bang on this because I have 3 minutes of no points, and after the 3 minutes of no points, I'm probably just gonna continue to scramble to get my sweat up and feel good for the next day if I'm still on top and if I can manage that. But in the meantime, we should probably try to hit this wrist lock, and I just kept banging on it, and eventually he moved his hand into the inside position trying to clear it, and I caught his elbow, and that was it. So got fortunate. Wrist lock I got taken care of. So.
Do you tend to be a wrist locker, and if so, why do you hate your training partners?
No, I don't. I don't do wrist locks at all. Actually, I pinned his wrist, and when I pinned his wrist, I felt that his hand was slightly bent, and I had top control on his wrist. So I was like, "Oh, I'm not leaving that away." So as I started pressing on his wrist, he started moving to get his wrist back, and I just kept pressing until I found his elbow and finished. So no, I don't usually do wrist locks at all. It was there, and I felt like I might as well just keep hunting for it because I could tell that he was reacting like he was scared of it. So
understood. Yeah, I mean that's the worst part is those wrist locks when they just come out of that position when you're just kind of stuck. It's the worst. But again, very effective tool. We're going to go out to your next match, which of course is you versus the gentleman Satterfield who beat Emil, who, again, I'm not going to say I was rooting for him more than you. Sometimes I just try to be loyal to the people who provide good services, and he did a good service that weekend.
Yeah, I understand duty and honor. That's a thing.
Yes. I think you're overshooting my dumb judgment calls as duty and honor. I think it's more so like, all right, let's see how this plays out. But so please explain that match, because that ended up going the time. But again, this is another one of those situations where our eyebrows were raised when we got to 34 points on that one, man.
Well, so, man, I watched his matches the night before, and then from that day, and then I watched what I could find on YouTube, and I found that the guy had, like, I don't know the name of the moves. I know wrist lock, that's good. I know Kimura, that's great. I know choke, that's good. I don't know much more than that. But I found that he hit basically like the knee bar with his legs from half guard and underneath, from like the bottom and the top. I can't remember what that's called, but like the hip bridge knee bar with your legs, where he locks the body. I'm like, oh god, that's gonna really mess me up real quick. And so then I see that he hit it on both matches. On day one, I'm like, well, that sucks. Like once from the top and once from the bottom. Like that's ridiculous. And then I'm like, okay, cool. So that's just weird. That's a weird coincidence. You know what I mean? Like it's like if somebody flying wrist locked you twice in a day. It's a weird coincidence. And then I found all the YouTube matches, and he had finishes like 70% of his YouTube matches with that. I'm like, that is terrifying, because that's at least a patella, if not a PCL, and he's a big son of a gun. So And I also really don't need another highlight reel loss. I had a highlight reel loss to Tex. Thanks for the Esteem Lock, buddy. I had a highlight reel cartwheel rear naked. Thanks, Nikki. I really didn't need a highlight wheel like lower body knee bar. Just really didn't need that to add to my record. And so I pulled guard on him. I was trying to hand fight. I could tell that he wasn't as mobile as some of the guys from the top off his knees. And so, but during that, he started trying to dig for like an under over position and hook with his heel, my heel. I'm like, oh my God, he's going for already. No. And so I pulled my heels back, and I play a significant portion of my time in the room from a seated upright position, like a 90-degree with the floor position, with my heels tucked both into me. So not like in front of each other, but like sitting in Indian style, as a means to just focus on my hand fighting. So if I can hand fight and I can't foot pummel, it's a completely different train. You know what I mean? And if your train partner can do everything, but you can only hand fight to defend and attack, or if you can hand fight only and only defend and your partner still has to beat you, that's a very different train. You know what I mean? So I spent a lot of time there. So I pulled my heels in and had, I think, wrist and elbow control. And when he went to displace his weight forward and I shifted, I felt him fall forward. Like, oh, cool, we can wrestle up. So I wrestled up, went to his hip, rode his hips, and he obviously switched through and tried to catch I saw it the previous night on YouTube, he tried to catch my leg so that he could hit that from half guard. And no siree, Bob, we're not going to let that happen. Mm-hmm. So we got to, I started using staples to ride his knees so that I didn't count as passing the guard. That way I could like move to the side position at the points time and, at least be able to score those because I could feel that he was ridiculously strong. And let's not like kid ourselves. He's in the second day of the trials. He's obviously good. I really didn't want to get to a spot where like if I'm not using staples to ride his hips, that means that he could be using his legs to pull my legs in and start doing that knee bar again. That sounds terrible. And so then it was like the first day, everything that I was doing I was like, man, I really don't want to have him pull my knee off, and I really feel like he's going to do it. And I feel like the more up in points we go, the more he's going to do it if he gets a chance, because I'd be pretty pissed too. So I started trying to use the muffler, because it's the only tournament that you can use the muffler in. And I have huge hands. I love the muffler. And every time I tried to do that, he tried to grab my wrist and elbow me and armbar me from the mount. And he was strong enough that he almost did it once. So I was like, okay, that sucks. So I just kept trying to scramble on him and not let him get up. And then, it was like 34-0. So it worked out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I saw the muffler happening a couple times, and I thought, if nothing else, John, you've got a good pro wrestling finisher there in need. So we may have to re-talk about this one at a later date, because I go, that doesn't look fun. And you know how when some people try to do that to you, sometimes you have a moment where you're more so just like thinking, this is an inconvenience. It's nothing. I saw it with you and I go, yeah, I don't know that would be the case for me. I think that would probably be I would have to really change things up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't do it with most of my training partners because, everybody hates the guy that does that. But my best friend, Brian Donahoe, who is one of my best training partners, he also has the head that's the size of a billboard. And so I try to do it to him because his mouth to his nose ratio is just so large that it's more difficult. But if I can get it on him, and I can, and I know every time I do it, he's just thinking, fuck this guy. So I was like, man, Satterfield's face is much more normally sized than Donahoe's. So, fair game. So.
It depends on the time and place. I have a buddy of mine who trains MMA and he fights, and he is definitely the mouth cover guy, if you would. And I will look at him occasionally and be like, if you do this, we're not friends. This is no longer a friendly role. And if I know he's got a grappling competition up, I will give him plenty of shit. If I know he's got a fight going up, I just kind of have to fucking live through it and go, ugh, yeah, I don't mind this. You're fighting. But if you're just grappling with us and you got a grappling tournament, no, we're not doing this. And he laughed because I think one time he saw me let him do it. And he was like, oh, you're not complaining about this one. I go, I don't like it. It just means I got to work harder to get out of it. And I'm really not about that life. I'm trying to do a very chill role, you dick. So I understand the rules.
That's a good point because, I mean, like, you can do it with your closest training partners and people who are at your level. Kids class, not the place to do it.
No,
You know,
no, for sure, no. And especially if the kids see and do as you do all the time, they're like, well, I just saw he was doing this, so why not? It works for John. John's going to ADCC again. I want to go there when I'm an adult. It's like, no, John's just kind of being a dick right now, everybody. So if he needs it, let him win a medal. But if he doesn't medal, we're going to give him shit for it.
well, I tell you, like, it's like, there are ways to do everything the right way, and then the way that wins. Like anything below the eyes is neck, right?
Yes.
So that is a theme in our room, and prime example of it at the ADCC is when Felipe Pena hits Bolshecha with the rear naked choke in 2017. I mean, like that's just a forearm in the jaw. That's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna take your teeth. You know what I mean? And like, props to Felipe Pena, wins the match. Beautiful, beautiful victory, and like totally get it, Bolshecha. I'm not losing my jaw either for a match.
No, and no,
but at the same time, like, so you obviously train that, but then you don't just hit that when you're rolling all the time. So,
and I tell people, I go, listen, do what you need to do when you need to get to the next competition. But if you see teeth marks from me in your forearm, know that you did that. That's your fault. I didn't do that. I didn't make the choice. You wanted to get something, and I didn't want to give it to you. So we have certain rules. I wasn't biting you. You forced my teeth through your skin. That's your bad, not me. So I get it. All right, cool. So obviously 34-0, great continuation. In the semifinals, you get a submission here. Walk us through, how did you get this submission?
Well, this was the match I was probably most excited about because Danny was moving like I expected Pat to move. He's a good wrestler. Guy is tank strong, athletic AF, and unfortunately, like just a genuinely legit nice guy. But he was he's a Team USA member. He's a world team member. Guy who wrestled D1. He's savage on the mat. Like, well, I know that I can't wrestle you, and so I'm going to do the same thing. It's been working for me all day. So we pull guard. We got really lucky because shout out to Mo Jassim and Tom DeBlas because the refs they had, they called action like they should be, like it's the FN ADCC and it's not anything else. I mean, pardon me, but I think one of the things that I like so much about this rule set is I think that wrestling should be rewarded heavily like it is in the ADCC. I'm not very good at it. That doesn't mean that I don't think that's like that it should be rewarded because I think top position should be rewarded. Because it takes something to get on top. And if somebody's going to like just, give up the top position and elect to go to bottom because they're not as good at being there, then yeah, props to the other guy. But at the same point, if you want to make that match still a fair match, then the guy on top has to be aggressive. And if he's not, then you've got to be willing to call stalling, and start penalizing guys. Because otherwise you're going to have this thing where the guy's just going to dance around on the outside and then rush in trying to get a quick score. And if not, just dance around on the outside. The match sucks. Nobody likes watching half the matches at the IBJJF for that. And at the same time, you're going to end up in a spot where, I mean, that's not like what the ACC is known for. So I was really glad because I'm less than 10 seconds in and he's shuffling, I'm scooting, and I hear action red or action blue. And I'm like, yes, awesome, cool. That's one. It hasn't even been 30 seconds, it hasn't even been 10. And there's only two more. And then after points, it's penalty. And then it's me, So I felt like that was going to press him. And then I keep chasing him down. I hear action again. We get into a scramble by the table. And, I had seen him bury guys with wrestling all weekend. Watched all his matches. Watched him, before the matches. And I saw him put guys in the mat like he was trying to dent the mat. And I was like, that sucks. But I could tell he really doesn't want to be swept / taken down, and B, that it almost seems like it's an offense that somebody's going to try. And so I had it in me that I'm going to wrestle this guy knowing that I can't beat him because I want him to think that I'm going to wrestle him. So I came up on the 2-on-1. I turned into a bar arm. I'm not Spencer Lee, as anybody knows who watched that match, but I turned into a bar arm and tried to come up on him, which obviously didn't happen, but it let me go to an underhook and try to come up on his hip, which also didn't happen. I sold on it pretty hard to make him think I was coming up, and I felt him hip like he was going to try to put me through the floor. So I pulled the guard. That's when they stopped us. I knew we were going to be getting stopped because we were at the table off the mat. And so I quickly got the hooks that I wanted right before they stopped. And I would say, like you asked earlier, like how did one affect the other? The rule set and knowing that A, they'll let us scramble off the mat, but B, as soon as it comes to a point that they can stop it, they will. So they can put us back on the mat. Like that intuitively allowed me to be like, okay, cool, get your hooks now because it's going to stop. You know, in the first 8 trials, I had a match like that with Austin Baker where we were going off, and I saw the ref about to put his hands on us and be like, stop. And as he did it, I put my X-guard hooks in, and they stopped it. So they restarted me with X-guard in the center. And sorry, Austin, because like I was getting pounded that whole match up until that point. And then when we restarted with me and X-guard having both legs, and I hipped him over, came up on him, and I was on top of the rest of the match. And like if it wasn't for that, I'm not sure that that I won that match. But then like going into the next ADCC trials, like that was much more present in my mind. And so I got my hooks right before they said stop into the position that I wanted, which, you know, we reset in the center. He got an underhook that he put an underhook in that he didn't have before. I just let it happen because I felt like that was going to give me more of what I wanted, because I was planning on using the hooks to kick his hip out and try to wrestle up again hard. And if he had the underhook, I was going to try to wrestle up hard and grab the arm and, butterfly sweep him because I knew that shit wasn't going to work. But I was going to do it because I wanted him to sell out. So that's exactly what I did. And I kicked his hip out, came up in the underhook, grabbed his arm that he had the underhook on, and hipped into him hard, knowing that there's no way that a guy of that caliber is going to let me just hook sweep him. And he didn't, and he sold out into his hip, and then I propped and did a log roll, came right up on top of him, and followed the hips, collapsed the hips, and then put a false knee in and started riding him. And then when I found an opportunity, as soon as his coach started saying, Danny, get up, I just saw him start, I felt him start to get up. I'm like, dear God, this guy's strong. Like, I'm on his back. I've got like both reverse hooks in, and they're turning into hooks. And this guy is just going to good morning me, up onto my feet. This is terrible. But when he started doing that, I started putting my chest pressure over his back so that he couldn't get up. And then he got up anyway, just by like looking up and good morning. I had the body triangle at this point in time, which made me think that I'm going to get spiked in my head because now that's illegal. But that wasn't illegal a week and a half ago, Yeah. And so, but he good morning, then he lifted his chin when he did it. So I went right underneath, and I was so in the red zone of, I'm about to die, that I put everything into that choke, and he tap, 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 tap. And then I heard stop. And that, like, as soon as I heard stop, I realized that I was feeling tap. So I stopped and dropped, and I said, I'm sorry, because I didn't mean to be choking him after he was tapping. I just, I reacted. I didn't realize that I was being tapped until I heard it. And then I'm like, oh God, that's what that was. You know what I mean? But it was just like, I was too much in the zone. So, won the match, got lucky. I think if he hadn't been so reticent to letting me try to wrestle, like if he was, if he hadn't wanted to put so much English on me trying to out wrestle him, I don't think I would have. I think it would have taken a lot longer to set up the sweep. But I wanted him to think that I wanted to wrestle up on him because that was what was going to give me the sweep. So it worked out.
This is really cool to hear the insight of what you bring to the table, because I'm hearing things that I like about competitors in terms of how you're breaking down these matches. Number one, it's pretty detailed. I always like that. Number two, you're also doing what I would do if I were you guys, which is I would be studying tape like nobody's business. I don't understand the competitors who don't. It's not really my jam. But I usually make a very strongly worded case of, but the information's out there. I get if you don't want to let it upset you. It shouldn't upset you. But there's footage that tells you clues. And it seemed like the clues that you were finding throughout the tournament, especially with the day in between, gave you some really important kind of insights to your opponents that then propelled you to greater success. Would you say that that is partially true?
Oh yeah, one of my teammates, who will remain nameless right here, he was really trying to help me out. So he sent me a bunch of his of Danny's wrestling videos. I'm like, oh, dude, no, that's gonna help me. Like, I know that he can wrestle me. I don't need to know how he sets up his single leg, man. Yeah, because if he steps in here and hits it like that, I don't need any of that. I know that whatever he does, I can't stop it. But the thing that I think is that I think a lot of guys are like, man, I don't really want to see it, because if I see it, then it's going to confirm that, oh man, this guy could beat me, or puts doubt in their mind. I have never gotten into a tournament, gone into a match not knowing I was going to win that match. Didn't happen, obviously. I'm not at that level, and I don't know that anybody is. But I've never gone into a match not knowing that I was going to win. I just happen to be wrong sometimes. And so because, regardless of, how much film I watch, I still don't know that I've still not known that I'm going to win that match. Shoot, I know that I'm going to beat anybody in the sport. That means, it's perfectly unrealistic, and I totally get that. But, you have to have that disposition if you're going to, have the confidence to let it go. So I try to watch as much film as I can, because I'm not very fast and I'm not very strong. But I have a pretty good noodle, and I've got a fair amount of technique, and I'm fairly long. So, what I can't make up for in athleticism, I feel like I can hopefully make up for in preparation.
Absolutely.
So
I'm a huge tape study guy. I'm a huge tape study guy, and half of the guys who I roll with, who are far younger and faster, better athletes, will always tell me, they're like, "Why do you do all that tape study?" I was like, "Do you ever notice why I have good rolls with you?" They're like, yeah, okay. I was like, do you realize I have none of your talents? Like zero of them, and yet somehow these are competitive roles? And they're like, well, yeah, but is that coming from the tape study? I'm like, it is only because of my brain. If my brain ever goes away, you guys will have the most fun rolling with me. But until then, I'm not an idiot, and I know how to tell you. And I'm like, and I'm the one that tells you how to beat me. I give you clues. I say, do this and you'll probably beat me. And they go, oh, okay. And I'm like, I'm trying to make it the level harder for me too. But,
right.
It's part of the game. Like, if it gets too easy, make the level harder. So don't be dumb and just go to try to always win just because you can do the same combination over and over again. At some point, it's not going to work. So, yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up about training, because I always tell guys that, hey, you know what? I train competitively in the room all the time. I like training hard. I like sparring. And I tell the guys everything I can on how to beat me, because I know that if I'm getting stopped, I'm going to use that stimulus to get better so that I don't get stopped. And we'll figure out a new way to stop me. And it doesn't make sense to look at it in some other way. Like, you always want, like you said, the game to be as hard as it can be.
Now, granted, if I don't like you, I won't tell you how to beat me. I'm not going to give the cheat codes to everybody. These are hot tickets. And so I don't want to just give it to the guys, because there are guys who I go, they're good enough. They don't need a cheat code. They'll figure it out pretty quick. So, yeah, it does happen. All right, let's get into your final match, which it seemed like they were really building this in, but it is a good moniker to have, which is you punched your ticket in 26 seconds. Did they say it was some kind of record? Because when Tom throws these things around, I know he's been around forever, but I also know there is no real fact checking in jiu-jitsu that is worth a damn. So when they go, I think that's probably the fastest anybody's ever gone. Okay, no fact check. And I go, I think so. Was that the case? Do you have like one of the fastest submissions in a final ever for the trials?
That would be hilarious. No, I have no idea. I didn't know they were saying that. I only found that out afterwards. And I admittedly haven't watched, I didn't watch the Flow Zone tape of it, so I don't know what they were saying.
You weren't missing much.
Okay. I was very blessed. I got lucky. I shouldn't say that. But I was talking with Heath beforehand, Heath and I game plan throughout the entire tournament. That guy's been amazing to have at tournaments like before. So Heath Pettigo and I are both under Hudry Glavaki. And before Heath was going out to tournaments and bringing his guys in before he had a gym, the guys in, like, my guys were the only team that was competing from the organization. And so that's kind of hard. Like when you're going out to a tournament, like you don't have really a support system or a coach in that regard. And, but to have a guy who, knows the game at a high level and can coach at a high level is great. And so, I was game playing with him before and, he asked like what I thought. And I said, well, we're going to pull, I know it's -1, but it's an 8-minute match. If I knew Tom was going to be the ref, I wouldn't even have been concerned. Tom was the ref, so I didn't have to be concerned. Like Tom knows what real stalling is. And what looking like you're trying to be active, but you're not being active. Tom knows what that is. So I don't have to worry about that. That guy's competed at the highest level in the world. So, but if he's, if I pull, it's -1. If it's 0-0, and I get him to take me down, and I don't finish him in 8 minutes, I don't get ahead, if I don't win on somehow in the 8 minutes of regulation, it's going to go to overtime. And I just watched him basically launch half the division over the last 2 days. So he's going to take me down. I'm going to pull for -1 in overtime. That'll suck. Or, I pull for one. Then I'll have a terrible time in overtime because then he'll have, what would it be, 4 minutes to just stall. And, if he hasn't had any stall calls yet, we're going to be in kind of a bad way. If I pull, it's -1 and he's got 8 minutes to stall on me. And if he does, if he can be active against me when I'm on the bottom coming at him and he's on top for 8 minutes, I can't figure out a way to score, then you know what? He sure as shit deserves to go to the show. You know what I mean? But I figured either way, I'm not going to, if I don't score in regulation, I'm not going to make the win happen in overtime. So we made the decision just to pull for -1 right off the bat. Wagner came up to me afterwards, Pocha, and said, I wasn't even sure if you knew that it was -1. Oh, no, I knew. I knew it wasn't going to come overtime. And I knew it wasn't going to wrestle the guy. So I pulled. We were hand fighting, and I noticed that he was sitting on the tops of his feet, which was good because that meant that he was really worried about me. He was really worried about me pulling him forward. And it's fine. Then they had to stop and switch our bands, which I think was the majority of the match, was us getting our band switched around. The match started again, and I could tell he wanted me to go to closed guard. He was giving every opportunity for me to go to closed guard because he would have wanted to body lock and sprawl and, bury me that way. And that's not my game. So when I started controlling his head, he tried to do a throw by with the leg, which is what he's done all weekend. And I was ready for it. I didn't want to hit the triangle. I just wanted to control his shoulder and arm because I was going to try to go to K guard. That was my plan was, try to get to control, go to K guard, and, come underneath, attack the leg. Upon, him defending the leg attack, come up on his hip, drag him to the ground, stay on top, get your 2, and then start running the score, and then finish if you can. But when he went to hit that pass by and I hit the triangle, got his arm, it was sweet, we're going to hit the straight arm. We're going to bang on his elbow really hard, and his chest posture is probably going to come right up. When his chest posture is going to come up, we're going to go right underneath the K, and we're going to attack the knee. When I banged on his arm went I was like, man, I think I got it. And so then I just kept banging on it, and he tapped. So it worked out. Got really, really blessed. I think I ran the match a million ways, and not one of them was that. So it worked out.
Well, it did, and congratulations.
Thank you, and all props in the world to him. I think he was the guy to beat. I said that to Flo all weekend. I mean, he ran through his side of the bracket, and he went through it probably more dominantly than I went through mine. I mean, he just hit people with the earth in every match up until that one, and just thundercocked people. So, he's just an absolute animal. Couldn't be a nicer guy either. So I would have loved, we're talking about styles making fights, would love to see Dana Ramos and Danny Chade. That would have been awesome. 2 guys who aren't going to take each other down, who aren't going to go down, and they both happen to wrestle at a high level. That would have been a blast to watch. but it didn't work out.
Here's some good news. I feel like when you've done your time, because you mentioned father time, all that sort of stuff, blah, 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 you'll be doing this forever. I'm not worried about that. But when you're less competitive, top tier, like going at it like ADCC tier, there may be a future in this for you in terms of matchmaking, because even with your opponents, you're like, ooh, no, that was fun, but I want to see you guys go next. How about you guys? I'm going to get off the mats. You guys go for it. I want to see how this plays out. At the very least, you were in a casino. I'm pretty sure you could have gotten some like betting going on over the sides. And mind you, you mentioned going off the mats. I saw the most leisurely amount of, hey, come on, don't, from all the refs who were so intrigued on like, let's just see it happen, that I thought at certain points Keith Corian was actually going to be at a blackjack table by the time that thing was done.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think it was good. I was worried about you guys on the dirty Jersey carpet, but better things did happen, and it was nice to see. I would like to ask, what did it mean, especially the last time you mentioned it was a highlight reel finish for someone else, but this time it was a highlight reel finish for you? What did the win mean this time to you?
Well, that was cool. In all honesty, like God, I'm going to quote Dave Schultz here. I don't really care about, I said, I don't, some consider me to be an element that's dangerous. Nobody considers me to be an element that's dangerous. But he says, after that, I only care about winning, pinning, and scoring points. Yeah, that's kind of me. I don't really care about if I'm a highlight reel or not. I actually don't like being that, because that means the other guy's on the opposite end. And having been on the opposite end, that really sucks. I just want to smoke everybody that I face. So I didn't really care to have a highlight. I mean, it didn't really bother. I'm not complaining about it, but it didn't really do anything for me to have a highlight finish, just because I've been on the other end of that before, and that sucks. So I just wanted to win, and I am opportunistic. So the first option I saw, I took, especially because I wasn't like, I mean, if you're not sure if you're going to get another one, you'll take the first one you see. If you think, you know what, I can probably ride this match out, and you got other matches in the day, you might want to like get a better sweat going on, because there's nothing like a live match to, feel warmed up. So like, my first match of the day, each day I drug out to a finish, and it was because I was trying to stay alive. At the same time, I wanted to get a good sweat. If I was already going to win, but I mean, if I was threatened to lose in either of those matches, I would have took the first thing I had seen and tried to finish with it. But yeah, it doesn't really do much for me in that regard. I think a lot of people like that. That's something for their Instagram. I've got an awesome career and don't have enough time for social media. So for me, it's not that big a deal.
Understood. I would just say though, I tell people this regularly, which is, our sport works on someone having to be the highlight reel. Like, if things go right for you, I don't think that person's going to like how they look on their side. How do I know this? I am also a photographer. So I have had people come up to me and say, how come you never get good photos of me? And I go, this sounds more like a you problem than me. Like,
totally.
You win the match, I take photo of you win match. You don't win match, I have photo of you win match. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I can make you look nice in your pose off. I think that's a good photo. But I tell people, listen, it is a byproduct of it. I think that people who are fans of the sport sometimes overdo the element of talking about what it is. It's so epic. It's like, it's a cool moment for people. And sometimes really cool shit happens, which means something unfortunate happened to somebody else. But if you are going after that same high, you need that to happen to them too. It's just a matter of
no question.
Well, I was just gonna say, if you're around it long enough, you'll more than likely either get your day back or you'll be on a good run, and then somebody can string together some good highlights for you, which means jiu-jitsu for you, not bad.
Yeah, no, it's better to be on the winning end of that highlight than the losing end.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with you. It's just that I never, it's never been the thing that I like. If I had I think somebody asked me one time, John, if you could choose having an ugly victory or a beautiful loss, what would you pick? And I know so many guys who are like, dude, I want that beautiful loss. Like, even if it's like, an insane scramble, I lose it. No, I choose the boring victory every time. I'm not the like the Ricardo Arona from Pride, who could just like eke out 20 minutes every match,
Yep.
you know. But that's only because I don't have that level of wrestling. Were I to have that level of wrestling, I would definitely be the guy that would eke out every match if I could.
I've definitely told people the quicker you win, the quicker we all go to eat. So I'm all about like, let's get this thing on the wrap. And when people go, man, are you going to stay here for the whole match? I'm like, well, I'm covering it. So I'm here as long as you're here. So if you could just punch face quicker, that'd be great for all of us. No rush, no rush. It's fine. I'd just like to see my wife and my dogs. That'd be cool. Anyway, I know we're starting to run long. I want to ask a couple quick last questions. The first of which, to me, is what does this mean for you in terms of, like, you've won this now, but you also mentioned one of your best moments was the UWW win. And I do want to ask a little bit about that experience, because that to me is a really cool thing. You mentioned some people don't know. This is one where people are starting to become more aware of it because they're making more inroads in terms of, hey, listen, we've got more grapplers coming in now. The trials are a little more competitive than they used to be. But it looks like the Mighty Ducks 2, where you take on international people, and I go, this is dope. Like, y'all are going to represent the country. What does that feel like to put on for your country like that?
Well, it's interesting because, like, and it's really unfortunate. I'm not a person to complain, but so if you're in the second and third world, or a place that the IBJJF doesn't have a presence, which is most of the world, they could give two shits about the IBJJF. The ADCC has more inroads in Eastern Europe and Asia than the IBJJF does, which is why you see the like Moldovan ADCC, national championship there. Why you see the Polish, ADCC event that isn't the trials. It's just ADCC rules tournament in Poland. And UWW has a lot of events. The European championships are bangers. They're tough. But if you're in the first world, IBJJF's cool and it's great. There's a lot of talent. There's a ton of talent, but the rest of the world doesn't care. But when you go to the UWW and you see like people who like literally had to have when I was in Kazakhstan, there was a guy I met from Kyrgyzstan that had to have his village help him to get together to get a ticket to Almaty, which is now not Almaty, Nur Sultan, which is where we were. Dude, that's a completely different level of whoa. I mean, I was just over there and happy to be there and happened to have, it happened to work out really well. But, that's a completely different level of wow. I'd never had anybody come up to me and be like, hey, aren't you a wrestler? Aren't you Team USA? Never had anybody care in the States about me as a grappler, really, ever. Rare exceptions at tournaments, but that was on the Kazakhstani like national news, or like the national television when we were there in Kazakhstan. When we were going out to eat, people were coming up to us, Team USA, wanting to take our picture. People saw us in the airport and they knew who we were. And I got my warm up stolen, so it wasn't like I was even wearing that. I looked like a hobo. So, but people knew. It was, I mean, like grapple sport, like wrestling in all of its different forms is different in Eastern Europe. It's different in the steppes. And the UWW is what everybody cares about. So, it sucks because over here, in the jiu-jitsu community, they don't really care much about it. I didn't really care much about it until I went over there and I realized what it was. And I just thought it would be something cool to do if I didn't get to do the ADCC back in 2019. And then when I went over, I was just like breath taken away. So yeah, that was definitely a completely different level. I'm really hoping that we can continue to grow the interest here in the States because there's a ton of talent here. And we definitely have what it takes to win the team title, and we should be winning the team title every year. I will tell you that I have heard the Russian national anthem more times now than I ever should have to for the rest of my life. I hate it, and I hate losing to them, and so does every other country, by the way. Just like nobody, I'm going to say something mean, just like a large portion of jiu-jitsu players don't like Brazil.
Sure.
There's a super majority of people at the UWW that don't like Russia. And, because they're super dominant. They're winning. They won the Europeans. They won Worlds. They've won Worlds every year since, I think, the beginning of time. So that sucks. And I don't want that to happen anymore. So one of my goals, I would say, like after I'm done competing, is I definitely want to raise a team for Team USA. And I'd like to be involved in the ADCC at some point, like, whether it's reffing or, doing anything for them, just because the organization is so cool. But I'd like to help raise a team to go over there and win the world championship if we don't do it while I'm still competing, because I feel like that's just something that I'm morally compelled to do.
Good for you. Thank you for doing that, by the way, because I'll let you know this. I love that we have a couple of the guys over that we know. And for the past, 5 years or so, I've known members of Team USA.
Luis?
Oh, yes. No, let me put it to you this way.
Yes.
Luis is such close friends to me that I roast him to all avails. Now, am I as good as Luis at jiu-jitsu? No. Can I wrestle with him? Absolutely not. But can I beat him senselessly through verbal assaults and by telling him how terrible his hair looks at any given day? Absolutely. And he's rendered helpless to the point where he's like, dude, stop roasting me. And I go, I won't, because it'll make you better. So I think actually when he ended up, I think him and Steven, I think at one point, I think I congratulated them after winning. And then I shook their hands and I pulled them close and I go, don't you fuck this up for America. Like, now you're like representing us. Before, you were just representing yourself or your affiliations, but now you're representing me, you dick. So if you don't bring home gold, I'm going to fuck you up later. And they were both like, but we just did the interview and you were really happy with us. I was like, well, I'm happy on the interview. Interview's done now. I can tell you whatever I feel like. This is how I feel. So you're espousing something that I understand and probably in private would do very, very aggressively to all of these people. But Luis is a beast, and Steven, same. Just, I love those guys. The people that they pull, when you say that they've got talent, it's not just there. I know Bree Stick. I know all these people who I go, yeah, these are the right people. Maybe we're just missing a little couple things. They all you all come together for a very short period of time and then go. So when you say you're trying to build a team, you're thinking that's probably a little bit more of a process of here's what we're doing specifically for this tournament. Here's how I could help guide you, sort of a thing, because I've been there.
My criticism was this year was that the trials were kind of we didn't get much warning for it, and the problem with that was that the guys that in my gym had already had other tournaments planned. I had one person at the beginning of this year that I wanted to field in every weight division, and I was fairly confident that at least half of them could qualify. I think we've got between masters and adult, we have I think 15 world champions at my gym, or we have 15 world golds. I think we have between masters and adult at my gym, and we've got 35 or 45 competitors or 45 total members. So per capita, we have a pretty high concentration of talent. And I was like, guys, this is what you need to do. We'll raise the money. We'll figure it out. Just didn't have enough time to get them together. But, I think part of it is, and this is where I really think it is, my wife was there this year. She had a couple heartbreaking matches. She was out wrestling the shit out of her opponent in 2 separate matches. And in both matches, she made a tactical error. And I think the reason for it in both of them was, if I try to try to grab the back and I end up on bottom, that's 2 for the other person. Because, it matters where you end up. So if you put the hooks in and they bridge to their back and they turn to face you, they're getting 2, like a sweep. You know what I mean? Because you're on bottom now, and bottom is always penalized by 2. And so when my wife Christina took this girl down, she put the girl in turtle. She had a body lock, put her in turtle, and then as she did, she put the hooks in, not thinking that, hey, you know what? If I miss the hooks, I'll be on the bottom. I think she's thinking IBJJF because, most of the countries that participate in the UWW, they train UWW rule set all year. That's how they think about it. There's not a whole lot of IBJJF tournaments in Europe anyway. But in here in the States, we do the UWW rule set once, and that's at Worlds. So, actually just last night we ran rounds we did a Shark Tank rounds with the UWW rule set. So break contact on top, that's -1. Guy in the bottom, is framing, it isn't attacking, that's -1. It's a very high scramble rule set, and just trying to get our guys just focused on it, because it's a very easy transition from UWW to ADCC rule set. And it's just more of a timing thing and using heel hooks, but that's about it. Like everything else, holding the guy down, having to pin for 3 seconds, things like that. These are all very close. But, IBJJF is, IBJJF's got a great rule set, because the rule set is progressive, like you would want a fight to go. You would take down to pass the guard, to get the knee, to get the mount, to get the back. And like if you're training for a fight in any way you choose a defined fight, that's how you would want the fight to go, is that way. But, in terms of like the other major rule sets, it's different. And so I think that's a big part of it where it hurts us, is that it's not intuitive to the guys who are competing.
Absolutely. It was hard to explain because I was there for the trials over on the West Coast side for the UWW. And I remembered a couple of my homies who were watching it were like, how were those points? And I go, he's on top. Like, you got to kind of understand, like, being on bottom is usually bad here. And it's high pace, so you don't have a lot of time to mess around. Like, we got to move quick. So when you hear me yelling out sweep, it is with good reason of, we don't have time to be here, because the longer you're there, the less time you have to score back.
Well, and my problem with it, I guess the only problem I have with the UWW rule set is that, I know we're getting out of topic, so I'm sorry about that. But so to reset the point, so you sweep, and then you pass the guard, and then you go to knee mount, then big sweep, pass the guard, you go to mount, you take the back. If you go outside of that order, so let's say you go to mount, you can no longer get side mount points.
Yep.
You have to get side mount, two back. If you go to back, you don't get mount or side mount points. Then the problem is, to reset that, you either have to go on bottom again to sweep, or you have to go back in their guard and they have to re-engage their guard. So on several occasions, I stepped back between their legs because they never closed their guard. I didn't get points. And so it's like, I'm trying as hard as I can to get a tech fall on this guy, because I want that. I'm up by 13 points, but I can't score any more points unless I'm going to let him sweep me or roll me, so that I can sweep him back and then start the chain of points again. So I end up winning, I think, 4 or 5 of my matches by 13 points each, because I couldn't get the 15 the last 2, and I couldn't get them to re-engage their guard because they're smart. They know that. And so I couldn't get the extra points for the team for the tech fall, and they were not giving up the sub, and I'm not giving up top position once I'm there. So, that was just kind of I understand it, but that sucked, because then they're like, action blue. And I'm like, I felt like it's that moment in Super Troopers where pull over, and he's like, he's already pulled over. He can't pull over. And he's like, what the fuck do you want me to do? I'm in mount with my forearm. He won't quit.
Yeah, I definitely tell people, I go, some people will have to jiu-jitsu like they're completing a bingo card at some point where they go, where am I supposed to go now? Okay. All right. I'll redo the whole thing just to get there again. That's cool. Not like it's going to let them back into the fight, but if I want more points, totally cool. I want to just kind of, as we again start to wrap up, sure. I want to ask this, because to me, you very nicely snuck this in, and I said we'd do a little origin story, and we can maybe get into this another time. But I want to know that you mentioned you were too shy to go to a gym when you were initially watching the ADCC, and yet here we are. What got you to get over that shyness? What was the kind of motivating factor that ended up getting you into a gym to start training?
Well, this will come as no surprise for anybody who has known me for any amount of time. But I graduated high school, didn't have any friends. I had a difficult time making friends when I was younger, socially awkward. So it's so the idea of going to the gym was very difficult, meeting other people, having to talk to them. That just sounded terrible. And so I was watching matches. You couldn't really find many instructionals at the time. The internet was too new. But I would watch matches and study that, and then okay, well, what am I going to do? The only thing I could think is, I was practicing on my body pillow. They had dummies I wouldn't have been able to afford them at the time, so body pillows was going to have to be. But I was like, okay, cool. I'll enter a local jiu-jitsu tournament and never roll with anybody, and we'll see how it goes. And I'll probably lose, which is totally cool. It's not like I haven't lost hundreds of wrestling matches at this point, and I'm conditioned to this. But then I'll be like, hey, where do you train? I'd like to come roll with you again. And then maybe I'll make a friend that way. And I have no idea how to make friends at this point, right? And so maybe I'll make a friend that way, and in doing so, I'll also have a place to train. Well, and so I entered a tournament, and I won it. Which is kind of cool because I never rolled anybody before, and then like I was triangle choking everybody. And so that was cool. And so then I entered another tournament, and then like stupid me, I'm like, okay, cool. Enter my first tournament as a beginner. I'll lose that, and I'll find somebody. I win that. So then I had to enter my next tournament as an intermediate because I thought that's how that worked. That's how that worked. Then I won that. And then so like I entered my next tournament as advanced, and I won that. I had this really crazy gimmick where I go to close guard, didn't really know what to do. I grabbed a figure four Kimura, and I was so flexible that I would unthread my leg through the Kimura and then put the triangle on and still have the Kimura and then finish the triangle. And I mean, that's ridiculous, but I remember I tapped a couple black belts being some dork that had never grappled before with it. So, definitely not something you're ever going to catch a guy on twice, but, everybody was susceptible to that at least once. And so did that. And then by the time I was doing that, I was like, you know what? I just got to find a place. I want to fight. So I went to a local kickboxing gym, and I wanted to learn MMA, and they had a martial arts program. So I went to their they had a jiu-jitsu program. So I went to their jiu-jitsu classes. And cool, it's going to be a class. The first class we showed up to was the first Monday of the month, which was like everybody spars with everybody. And you basically get Shark Tanked in the center. And I ran over everybody. And so then come Tuesday, they asked me if I'd teach a class. I have yet to have anybody teach me any jiu-jitsu at this point. So now I'm like, well, you get a free membership and we'll pay you $300 a month. It sounded better. That sounded great. I didn't have a job at the time. And so that was how I started going to my first gym. And that's how then I never really had a coach since then. Met Scott Morton in 2011. He's Anthony Smith's jiu-jitsu coach who's in the UFC. And he and I we became training partners, and he was under Rodrigo Vaki. I got my purple belt from Luis in 2010. And I got my brown belt from Luis Togno of Alliance in 2010. So I got my purple belt in May and my brown belt in November. I didn't have a blue belt. That was cool. And then I met Scott, and then my black belt in 2014, and been trying to figure out how to do this thing the whole time. So, but yeah, that was I was super shy, couldn't figure it out, how to talk to people. Eventually I just knew that I had to go someplace that I could figure this thing out, because I didn't even know how to get an MMA fight. You didn't just walk in for an MMA fight like you walk in for a jiu-jitsu tournament. And just crazy.
What do you attribute your ability to do so well at the very beginning of this? Because again, most people try this, it's set up for failure. But you mentioned you also had a bunch of wrestling matches when you were growing up that you didn't win. So the evidence here, it says, if you're trying to just read this case on paper and the guy's like, well, I started winning when I just signed up for tournaments without training, people would go, but how? So
that doesn't make sense.
How?
I think what happened was, so wrestling, and something that Josh Barnett said once that I thought, man, that is about as true a statement as I'd ever heard when we were talking about. It's I'm still terrible at wrestling. My wife is a high school women's wrestling coach, and she is a hammer. She was a D1 college swimmer, and she missed her calling as a wrestler. She's a way better wrestler than anything else I've met for the time she's doing it. I can't figure it out still. I'm really trying, but I'm just terrible at it. But, Josh said that, wrestling is leverage through strength, and jiu-jitsu is strength through leverage. And, if you don't figure that out, you're never going to do well in either. And I think the thing that was the difference maker was when I watched Pride, when I was watching the ADCC and everything, trying to figure it out as much as you can by watching. Jiu-jitsu makes sense. Jiu-jitsu is mathematics. Jiu-jitsu is science. It might as well be organic chemistry or physics or whatever anybody else says that makes a lot of sense and is really easy for people. It's just this goes here, that goes there. That's where the force vector for that is. Oh man, that totally makes sense. You can watch an X guard and be like, oh, okay, cool. I've got pressure behind the knee and pressure in the hips so that he can't be strong, he can't turn. If I lean this way, he'll fall over. Boom. And this is how the choke works. That makes sense. Wrestling, Jiminy Christmas, you got to lift and you got to use timing and you've got to use use all these muscles. That's really hard. I think that's probably what the biggest difference is that there's a level of athleticism to to wrestling that there just isn't. I mean, there is jiu-jitsu at a high level, but like you could be an unathletic person. And I say this because more out of hope than anything else, because if this isn't the case, then I'm done. So you could be an unathletic person that grapples, and their skill set is good enough. This also might be because the sport's young enough. You can find a way to win. You can find a way to get an angle and use like superior leverage to control somebody, and then you can break them, like their arm or their leg or whatever. Because you like things that are potentially dangerous you can work through. You can't do that in wrestling. So in wrestling, on the other hand, like it's always the hardest way possible to do anything. Like how would you normally control somebody if you've got like a 2-on-1? Well, yeah, you put them in a figure 4 lock, right? Except for that's illegal in wrestling. How would you control someone from a front headlock? You would strangle them. That's the easy way to do things. That makes sense. In wrestling, nope, you have to like, have an arm in. You have to do this in the strongest way possible. That makes absolutely no sense at all. And the only reason that those rule set is there is to support the sport of wrestling. You know what I mean? And so that I think is like what, I think jiu-jitsu made sense because wrestling didn't. And I think if I had been more athletic, I think jiu-jitsu would have been a lot harder, because the only way I was ever going to be successful initially, and probably even now, is if I was able to accomplish something technically, because the guys I was competing against and then like training with were far better athletes than me. And I found like, oh man, yeah, this like my leverage here or my force vector there definitely shuts down their ability to be strong. Why you feel so strong, John? Well, I know that I'm not, I can't bench my body weight. I can't squat my body weight, but I know that if I lean right here, I feel really heavy. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably a lot of it, and yeah, I definitely think that's probably most of it. And then like adding in, getting in shape and having a gas tank. Like I'm probably, I'm a high type 1 fiber guy with a pretty large aerobic capacity. And so like the longer match, because that's why I didn't want the ADCC the trials to be on 2 days. Just like I don't like the ADCC being on 2 days. I want it on 1 day, because I want by the end of the match for me to have had an hour and a half on the mat, my opponent to have had on the hour and a half on the mat. So the longer the day goes, the better it is for me. If that guy gets to recover and he's all like muscle steel and sex appeal the next day, I'm still just John. You know what I mean? And that makes it hard.
John, don't sell yourself short. I'm sure you're some muscle, some steel, don't know sex appeal. That's somebody else to decide. But, hey, listen, for the sake of conversation, we'll give it to you. I just know that what you've done is impressive. And I would maybe make the assumption that those early days when you got over your shyness, you signing up for that competition without really having the training, which we don't recommend for people. I mean, no. If it helps you, do it, but it's a tough beast to find the humility after that to make it work. But in your particular case, I think what it did was it unleashed the capacity that you have in your brain to find what it was meant to do. I think even in wrestling, you're like, I don't know that I can make this work, but I definitely think about it a lot. And I think for jiu-jitsu, what it became was you're competing in it, and it began what is clearly something that we see now, which is your analytics for this are top-notch, your ability to break down and decompress these things. Now we see the realized version of it. But I think those infancy beginnings were like, hey, man, I'm figuring out some of these codes that I think I like to do, and these are puzzles that I like to attack. So there is something to be said about you saying, maybe I don't know what it is, but maybe I'll find it by doing it.
Yeah, I think so I've always been hyper competitive. I always, when I was in high school, I was the way I was making a majority of my money was playing video games. I was playing Halo 1 a lot. Halo 2 came out and you could play. You didn't have to have training partners because you could have people online, and that just totally ruined the environment, totally ruined the ability to be competitive. But until then, that's how I was doing a lot of it. And, training to the point where it's not fun anymore. And that's how you have to train jiu-jitsu. I think a lot of the times, I have fun in the process, but not every day should be a good day, But when I was a kid, I was like 8 years old. I remember figuring out what the Olympics were and figuring out what a gold medal was, and wanting to have a gold medal in wrestling someday, and be an Olympic gold medalist, and knowing that, oh man, I'm not very good at wrestling. That sucks. Well, I'm going to keep doing it because I know if you try hard enough, long enough, you'll make it. And by the time I got to high school, I had not won anymore and lost all of them. And so I was like, oh, that really sucks. But I think it was just because I found the wrong sport because like I still wanted to be that guy that was still chasing that. I just didn't know what I was chasing. So I found grappling and it made sense, like to what you said. And then, I was still on the hunt. That's one of the reasons it was the UWW was so cool in 2019 when I won, and why like the ADCC, should I happen to, find my way to the top of the podium, will be even cooler, was that in the sport of like grappling on a global level, like more people care about the UWW and the IBJJF, have a couple of black belt world championships there at Master One. But like it was a way bigger deal to win UWW gold, and more like the ADCC has like prestige above that. So like to be able to accomplish that goal in what is like the Olympics of grappling, it'd be like an entire lifetime coming true, So be neat.
Well, good job, Dick. You asked my last question because I was going to ask you, what would it mean to win ADCC? And then you already answered it. So cool. Good job.
Well, it's interesting because like I'm from Iowa, so that's like Tom and Terry Brands, that's Dan Gable, that's Frank Gotch, like that's Father Catch Wrestling, and some of the greatest hammers in the history of wrestling. And it would be really cool to leave a mark on the sport of grappling and be from some small town in Iowa. So I think that's probably one of the biggest driving factors for me, other than making my school and my my mentors and all the people who have supported me over the years proud, is like just knowing that that I was able to do something like on the world stage from some small town in Iowa, and that'd be really neat.
Well, good on you, man, and congratulations. We can't say it enough. It's just one of those things that it will always be on your resume list. It's always going to be up there with you doing great things, like you mentioned, doing well in these Masters divisions, killing it on the UWW stage. Now you've got ADCC, two-time competitor, no matter what. So I think that's pretty dope, man, for a kid who didn't know how he was going to do it while watching it with his dad, who I guess inadvertently challenged you to do it. And somehow here we are talking about your experience and your journey through the last trials. So I want to say congratulations to you, man. And I really do mean it, because I had somebody who was walking by who was watching along with us. So we did a fight companion. And when we do these things, normally I keep a low profile and I don't put it live without it being very condensed sound. We did it during an open mat. So one of the people who was walking by goes, "Oh, is that John? Yeah, he's the one that lost to Nikki." And I was like, well, he's about to win, yo. Like, I don't know if you see this, but like, look at this match. And they go, "Really?" And I go, it's funny how sometimes the average person may not know Dick, but then all of a sudden when they walk in, they're like, "Oh, I think I know what's happening." I was like, have you watched his run? Like, it's looking pretty good. He's in the finals right now. And 26 seconds, and we're done. All right, well, who gives a shit? Now he's going to be back. And I tell people, I'm like, it is a fascinating thing to get on this. It's part of the reason why MMA or jiu-jitsu math doesn't work, is that there's an element of surprise. And there's always something that you don't expect. And I think it's pretty cool to be able to have this as another notch on your belt. So congratulations to you. We'll be rooting for you, my man. It's going to be a crazy ADCC. But I definitely wanted to give you a chance to shout out any of your training partners, any of your sponsors, anybody who helped that you felt helped you make it to the top of this podium. The floor is yours, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. I would have to start with my mom and my dad and my brother. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today. Obviously, because mom and dad had to do a little work to make that happen. But then after that, I was, I had a really good family life growing up, and they were always very encouraging, and they still are. So I'm really fortunate for them. My wife is the single greatest thing that has happened to me since I became an adult. If it wasn't for her, I can't even imagine. I don't know a person that is as decent a person as she is. And And that's of all the people that I know and don't know. There is no better person that I've met than my wife, and I'm very blessed to have her. I'm actually, I think I'm just lucky because she hasn't figured it out that I tricked her yet, and so I'm hoping that she doesn't. But her family, especially her mom and dad, are just two wonderful people, and I love them like I love my parents. My wrestling coach Keith Massey, he coached me when I was a kid. After the last ADCC in 2019, I was like, hey, you know what? I need to start working on my wrestling again because I need to be able to. I can't take the guy down. That's fine, but I need to be able to wrestle up from the bottom, and I can do that because of him. So Coach Massey started working with me, and I credit all my success in being able to come up and threaten to be able to come up because of him. You guys never stopped believing in me from the time I was 9 until I'm not like right now. So I really appreciate him. Joe Bodler and Brian Donahoe are the other two black belts that I have in my school. Brian is one of my best friends, and Joe is one of my mentors, and they have just helped frame like my focus and help me, run a successful program. They're two incredible people, and I wouldn't have anything. I mean, they're my best training partners. I work for Clark International. We're an executive protection firm based out of Omaha, Nebraska. If it weren't for back in 2014, my boss, Dan Clark, offering me a part-time job that turned into an incredible career, I wouldn't be able to do the job that I do, and I wouldn't be able to train like I do. I definitely feel like if it wasn't for Dan and my partner Dalton, I wouldn't have been able to do any of the things in jiu-jitsu that I do. They support me in everything. They let me take the time that I need to go train, the time that I need to go compete. We have a very volatile schedule that runs 24/7, but that doesn't mean that I don't get to train all the times that I need to train, early in the morning, late at night, during the day, whenever it is. They've supported me. They support me leaving the country to go compete. I mean, I could not ask for a better support system. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. So, and that's just truly incredible. Other than that, I'll finish up by saying that King's Komodos is my official sponsor, and they're just absolute hammers of people. They're very good people. They make obviously amazing products. If it wasn't, for like all the stuff that they do in the sport with Fighters Market and everything else, most of us wouldn't have good gear. I think that, King's has like revolutionized what it means to have a quality gi and to be able to buy it at an affordable price. They're incredible. And anybody who, hasn't had a King's kimono on, well, they're making a mistake. They should. Other than that, Omaha Barbell, been training with them since 2013. They are the premier powerlifting gym in Omaha, and they're just a bunch of hammers. Axios Jiu-Jitsu is our school. Anybody who wants to come train, you should. We are an interesting niche in Omaha in that we are the only school that focuses exclusively on competitors, and were it not for almost every other school in Omaha pushing competitors out, we wouldn't have the ability to exist. But they did, so here we are, and that's why we have such a high concentration of talent. So if you want to get really good, you should come here. But if you don't want to train hard, you should probably go someplace else. And that's no hard feelings. If you come here and you decide that you don't know if it's for you, I promise you it's not us, or it's not jiu-jitsu, it's us. And there are better schools in town for you. And if you let us know, we've got a whole list of the names and class times of all the other instructors in town, because we know that we're not for everybody, but that doesn't mean that jiu-jitsu isn't. So I would tell anybody who wants to get involved in jiu-jitsu who is in Omaha, come check us out. And if you don't check us out, we'll give you the names of somebody else that you might like a little better in town. Other than that, we're super cheap. We're $79 a month, and if you can't afford that, let us know. We'll work with you. Other than that, that's about it. Oh, I should probably shout out Lane Grease and Big Josh Nelson, and Aaron Soderwhite and Christy and Charles, because those are the rest of my high level training partners, and they are just absolute hammers. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have the conditioning. I wouldn't have the ability just to keep going, because I train with them every day. Obviously my wife, I already said her, I'm just saying her again because she's the best thing that ever happened to me. That's about it. I should say that I don't get to train with him as much as I like to anymore. He ended up opening his own school across town, but Scott Moore, and I trained with him for half a decade. And when he met me in 2011, I had an X guard and that was it. And I had just taken silver at Purple Belt No-Gi Worlds. And I had been training for all of like 8 months in actual jiu-jitsu, and then got my brown belt. And then I met Scott, and then Scott, and I was terrible in the gi. I was worse in the gi than I was in wrestling, if that makes sense. Just awful in it. And Scott took me from like being awful in the gi to taking bronze at brown belt at Gi Worlds 5 months later. So if there's a guy who can like who can like make you as good as you could be, Scott's pretty good at that. He's got a school across town. He works primarily with MMA fighters. So if you want to do MMA and that's like your primary focus, you know, I mean, he's coaching Anthony Smith in the UFC. He's got a lot of other guys that are competing at a high level in MMA, you know, and he's worked with almost every MMA fighter that's ever come out of Omaha. So you probably wouldn't be poorly served training with him.
Well, that's dope. Look at that. We have made our way through an interview. We've talked about your ADCC experience. We talked about your UWW experience. We got some origin story. We got to know you a little bit better. I want to thank you again. And like I said, man, it is so cool that now you get to go back to the dance. I know this next year of prep that you're going to put in is going to be epic, especially, you know, now that I've gotten to know a little bit more about your gym. I can't promise that I would visit it because now I've heard the definition and I'm like, listen, bro, I'm trying to stay pretty in the face. I got to be on air half the time. But I would tell you this, it sounds like a wonderful place for especially grapplers who need really, really tough training, but smart training that gets them to the podium. And clearly the results speak for themselves. So my thanks to you, sir. I appreciate it. I wish you all the luck in the world. I cannot wait to see you put on at ADCC next year, sir.
One last thing.
Yes.
Sorry, I almost forgot. One of my students, Ryan Yamada, took a job teaching another gym across town, Nebraska BJJ, and they are putting out incredible competitors over there. He just won brown belt No-Gi Worlds and got promoted to black belt. He's an incredible competitor and a great training partner. And so just I didn't want to forget him because the guy's an absolute stud, and he's putting out good guys over there too. So. Like I said, there's a lot of good jiu-jitsu in Omaha, and you wouldn't be poorly served wherever you show up.
Look at this man. I was about to sign off, and he's like, no, hold on. I got to shout out another person real quick because this dude is the homie. Like, literally had the opportunity to plug his social media, do whatever he needs to do, but he makes sure to plug the training partners that helped him. I appreciate that. John, again, you're a good guy. I appreciate you. Congratulations, and we can't wait to see you next year, man.
Thanks, man. See you next year.